Hello, everybody. Welcome once again to Talking Pro Football. My name is Michael Carlyle. We will get you ready for Week 17 in the National Football League, and we're starting to get down to the nitty-gritty. A lot of playoff implications this week. We'll break down the playoff picture here in just a moment. Of course, we want to start the week acknowledging the passing of John Madden, a guy who transcended the sport for so long, first as a head coach with the Raiders, a longtime broadcaster. Of course, his reach on the game continued long after he had retired there with the video game that shared his name. And Madden, I think it gets lost a little bit, but as a head coach, he was really, really good. We know he won a Super Bowl with the Raiders, but he left Oakland at the time with a record of 103, 32, and 7, a 759 winning percentage. That's the highest winning percentage in the history of the NFL by any coach with at least 100 wins. This is a guy who really transcended the sport and was still as relevant today with the Madden video game as he was in his coaching career and in his broadcast career. So certainly he's going to be missed. Thoughts and prayers go out to the family of the late John Madden. All right, let's take a look at the standings as we head into Week 17, and then we'll get into the playoff picture. We'll start in the AFC, and in the East, Buffalo, your leaders, they are 9-6. Now, so are the Patriots, but Buffalo has the tiebreaker there. So as long as they can maintain, and I think they will, they should come out your winners in the East. You've got the Dolphins at 8-7, and the Jets at 4-11. In the North, there are a lot of questions in the AFC North. At the moment, Cincinnati 9-6. They are your leaders. The Ravens are 8-7. The Steelers are 7-1, and Cleveland is 7-8. Then in the South, and the AFC South has gotten really tight. Tennessee, they've had their struggles. They're 10-5, but the Colts are coming on strong. A game back at 9-6, and then you've got the Texans at 4-11. The Jaguars at 2-13. In the AFC West, Kansas City looking like the Super Bowl contenders we all thought they were going to be. They're 11-4. They've won 8 straight. Chargers are 8-7. The Raiders are 8-7. The Broncos 7-8. In the NFC, we'll start in the NFC East. The Cowboys 11-4. They're followed by the Eagles at 8-7. Washington 6-9, and the Giants are 4-11. In the NFC North, Green Bay 12-3, best record in the conference. Minnesota second in the North, they're 7-8. The Bears are 5-10. The Lions 2-12-1. In the NFC South, Tampa Bay at 11-4, your leaders. The Falcons and the Saints both 7-8. Carolina 5-10. And in the NFC West, the Rams at 11-4, a game better than the Cardinals at 10-5. San Francisco is 8-7. Seattle is 5-10. Now, as far as the playoff picture, things are a little more set in the NFC. The AFC is wide open, and we'll start there. There's just one team that's clinched a playoff spot, and that's the Chiefs. They've actually clinched the AFC West already. They are 11-4. If the playoffs started today, the rest of the seeding would look like this. The Titans at 10-5, the Bengals at 9-6, and Buffalo at 9-6 would be 1 through 4. They would be your division winners. Then you get to the wild cards. The Colts are 9-6. The Patriots are 9-6. The Dolphins would have the final wild card spot at the moment at 8-7. But right behind them, you've got Baltimore, who's also 8-7. The Chargers are 8-7. The Raiders are 8-7. Steelers are hanging around at 7-1. And even Cleveland and Denver at 7-8. They're not out of it, depending on how things play out over these last 2 weeks. And with the way things have gone in the AFC, I don't think anything is really off the table. Now, having said that, I do think the Patriots definitely get one of those 3 wild cards. I love the way Miami's playing right now. They've won 7 straight. I think they get one of the wild cards. So we'll have to see how this plays out. And of course, the Colts at 9-6, they may run into some issues this week, depending on the status of Carson Wentz, who was put on the COVID list earlier this week. We'll get into that a little bit more later on. But that would be the only thing I could see derailing them. But we'll see how things play out. If we've learned anything this season, anything that can happen, probably will happen. So we'll see how that plays out. Now, the NFC, like I said, it's a little more set. You've got the Packers. They've clinched the North. The Cowboys have clinched the East. The Rams, they've clinched a playoff spot, both they and the Cardinals in the West, but the division crown is up for grabs. Tampa Bay has clinched the South. So Green Bay, Dallas, the Rams, and the Buccaneers at the moment would be your top 4 seeds in that order. Then you've got the Cardinals, the Niners, and the Eagles would be your 3 wild cards. And we know Arizona will be in the playoffs one way or the other. We know the Rams will be in the playoffs one or the other. So one of them will win the West. One of them will be a wild card. That leaves us the other 2 wild card spots. At the moment, the Niners and the Eagles in that order. And right behind them, you've got Minnesota at 7-8. The Falcons are 7-8. The Saints are 7-8. Washington, theoretically still alive at 6-9, but honestly, with just 2 games left, Washington's role looks to be more of potentially playing a spoiler than getting a playoff spot, but we'll see how it plays out. Really, the only one of those teams that are on the outside looking in at the moment that I could see making a run and possibly getting one of those playoff spots would be the Vikings. And honestly, I don't feel really good about Minnesota either. Now, they're probably a little better than their 7-8 record. They've played a lot of close games, but they've also come up on the losing end of a lot of those close games as well. So don't be surprised if the Niners and the Eagles don't hold on to those final 2 wild cards. And again, either Arizona or the Rams will be your other wild card. So it is an interesting time. We've got these 2 weeks left. We'll see how things play out. Before we look at the Week 17 matchups, let's look at some news and notes as we head into the final 2 weeks of the season. Some interesting things. Most games this season with a passer rating below 60, and this probably will not surprise you. Baker Mayfield has had a passer rating of below 60 4 times this season. Now, I'm not as down on Mayfield as some folks are. I think, look, there's no doubt he's playing hurt. I think we can all acknowledge that. But I also think he's hurt more than either he or the Browns have let on, and I think that's affected him, and he's trying to do things that his body at the moment just won't let him do. Sam Darnold, despite missing a number of games with injury, he's had 4 games this season with a passer rating below 60. Zach Wilson, same situation. He's missed some games with injury, still 4 games below a passer rating of 60. Then you've got 3 players tied with 3 games. Trevor Lawrence, he's had 7 games this season with at least 10 pass attempts and no touchdowns and no interceptions. That's the most by a player in a single season since 1950. And while we're on the subject of Trevor Lawrence, 1 passing touchdown over his last 280 attempts. Let that sink in. 1 TD pass in his last 280 attempts. That is the longest span of passes by a rookie with 1 or fewer passing touchdowns in the last 30 years. Conversely, let's talk about Dak Prescott in a moment and the Dallas Cowboys. In Dallas at 11-4, they've clinched the East, and they are still in contention for the number 1 spot in the NFC if Green Bay were to stumble. But Dak Prescott versus his rivals in the NFC East since 2017. He's got a record of 21-3. He's thrown 46 touchdown passes against NFC East rivals since 2017 and just 12 interceptions. Anybody who's still questioning why the Cowboys pluck down the money to keep Dak Prescott, that's why. He puts up big numbers when it matters. Speaking of the Cowboys, they scored 56 points against Washington on Sunday. For perspective, the Giants in 4 games in the month of December have scored 46 points. The Jaguars in 4 games in December, 44. So the Cowboys outscored both the Giants and the Jaguars for the month of December on Sunday night alone. Tom Brady, the ageless wonder, he leads the NFL in the following categories. Passing yards, he's thrown for 4,580 yards with 2 games left. He leads the league in completions with 422. Pass attempts with 632. Passing touchdowns with 37. And oh, by the way, he is 44 years old. It's another MVP type season for Brady. Now, I don't necessarily think Brady wins the MVP. I think there's Brady fatigue. I think you've got some other interesting candidates as well. But Tom Brady, despite being 44 years of age, is still putting up huge numbers. The Miami Dolphins, we touched on this a moment ago, 7-game win streak. It's the franchise longest win streak since 1985 when Don Shula and Dan Marino led Miami to the AFC Championship game. The Minnesota Vikings, and we talked about the Vikings as maybe the one team in the NFC that's on the outside looking in that could possibly play their way into the playoffs. Well, that's going to be hard. Not only do they seem to come up short in all these close games that they play in, but they're going to have to do it the rest of the way without wide receiver Adam Thielen. He was placed on the injured list with an ankle injury this week. His 2021 season is done. And some coaching news, the Jacksonville Jaguars have requested permission to interview both Dallas Cowboy coordinators, defensive coordinator Dan Quinn, as well as offensive coordinator Kellen Moore. With the new rules in the NFL, you can start interviewing coaches in the final 2 weeks of the season. Dan Quinn has turned down an opportunity to interview with the Jaguars at the moment. Not that he's not interested in the job, but he says he wants to wait until the Cowboys season is over before he looks at other opportunities that are out there. Kellen Moore will most likely do the same thing. It'll be interesting to see what the Jaguars wind up doing with their coaching search. You had the number one overall pick last year. You've got Trevor Lawrence. Despite his struggles this year, you'd like to think that they're in a good position at the quarterback spot long term. They're also most likely going to have the number one overall pick in this upcoming draft as well. So despite the struggles, the future may be looking up in Jacksonville, especially if you can find the right hire. All right, let's jump right in. Week 17 in the National Football League. It is a very pivotal week with a lot of playoff implications to be figured out. No Thursday game this week. We'll start on Sunday and the early games, and this will be another one of those with playoff implications. The Eagles, they are on the road. They're 4-point favorites in Washington. Remember, the Washington football team coming off its worst loss of the season. The Eagles, meanwhile, they beat Washington a few weeks ago, 27-17. They're playing well. Like we mentioned earlier, Washington, their best case scenario, despite being mathematically alive for a playoff spot, they're probably playing spoiler at this point. I don't see it happening, though, coming off the Sunday night loss to Dallas and the manner in which they lost. And Philadelphia quietly have been playing really good. They're averaging 184.3 rushing yards per game in their last 3 wins. I think that continues this week. I do like the Eagles to go on the road and beat Washington. Carolina's on the road. They're at New Orleans. New Orleans still alive for a playoff spot. Saints 6.5-point favorites here. I don't like this game at all for a couple of reasons. It looks like that for the Saints, they might get Taysom Hill back this week. They might not, but there's certainly a lot of questions there. The quarterback spot for the Panthers, Sam Darnold most likely will start. I don't like this matchup at all. I don't like all the unknowns with the COVID situation, especially around the Saints. But the Saints are the better team here. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean they're good. Carolina's bad, and Carolina's got injury problems as well. But I will take the Saints here because I got to pick somebody, right? So we'll take New Orleans at home. Tampa Bay Buccaneers go on the road, and they are huge favorites at the Jets. And if you're asking me to pick, go with the spread or against the spread, I might look at this game a little differently, but remember how we do it here. We're really more concerned about just straight up who's winning, who's losing. Tampa, 13.5-point favorites coming in. Look, Zach Wilson, he led the Jets to a victory last week. Buccaneers, though, this is a whole different ball game here. Despite their injury problems, Tom Brady's going to lean heavily on Antonio Brown and Gronk in the passing game. Jets are terrible defending the run. Look for Ronald Jones to have a big game. I do like Tampa Bay to win this one and probably win it pretty easily. A really interesting AFC matchup, another one of the early games. Tennessee at home is a 3.5-point favorite against the Miami Dolphins. Dolphins, one of the hottest teams, not just in the AFC, but all the NFL. They've won 7 straight. Titans, though, they're 6-2 at home this season, despite their up and down year, especially since Derrick Henry went out. Some weeks they look really good. Some weeks they just look lost. I'm not sure what Titans team we get this week, but I think Tennessee in the end will win this one. I think they figure out a way to do just enough to win. I still like Miami. I still think they get one of the wild card spots in the AFC. But if the Titans are going to hold off the Colts for the division, they're going to need to get this win. And I think they figure out a way to get it done. I'll take Tennessee narrowly over the Dolphins. Jaguars are on the road. They're at New England. The Patriots are 15.5-point favorites at home. Another game with a really big spread, and it's a battle of rookie quarterbacks, Trevor Lawrence and Mac Jones. We talked a little bit about Trevor Lawrence's struggles earlier. Mac Jones may be hitting that rookie wall a little bit, but the Patriots' success is really predicated on defense, and that defense is